I'm Marisa Norcross.
And I'm Dave Freund, and this is The Next Page.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How are you, Marisa?
Good on this sunny day.
Oh, it's gorgeous. This is the most wonderful time. Now, I
can't believe you're saying that.
Weather-wise, this is the most wonderful time of the year.
I know.
Yeah, because our listeners know that I'm a Christmas person.
Absolutely.
Well, so that also means that, in a few short weeks, we'll be coming up to Leon Day.
Yes, halfway.
Which is Noel backwards, spelled backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
we'll have to try to remember that in our podcast as well, that it's Leon Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And then that also means the days start getting shorter. No, we're not going there yet.
No, I'm loving the long days. Mm-hmm.
I am too. I was actually out fishing with Tim last night, my youngest son, and it was just beautiful. It was like 8:20, and the sun was setting on Otisco. Like, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So we're talking about learning today.
Mm-hmm. Very important topic.
It is, and it kind of goes along with last week's topic of have you found your partner? And as I was thinking about what I was going to write about, I realized that, partnering in learning is such a powerful tool.
Mm-hmm.
And what first came to mind was our 21 Laws Mastermind that we do for our individual members, where every month we get together and we talk about 2 chapters in John's best-selling book, I believe, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And we've been doing it for 2 years now, and what I love is what I learn from those that are participating in the mastermind.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I know you moved on to us to take our group, or that first cohort, onto a second mastermind group, but it just was so cool to see what these people think. I've been studying these laws for several years now, probably 6-7 years,
mm-hmm.
And teaching on them, and yet they come up with things I never saw in the law.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. And the cool part is that the reason why they're seeing it is that all of us live in a very dynamic world. Our lives are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And the application of those principles varies based on our life experiences at the time.
Right.
And that's why it was so cool. And so I kind of wrote about the power of a mastermind. And really that this topic of masterminds or group study, group learning, really came out of some writings of Napoleon Hill back in the turn of the last century, I think like 1920. Where he was realizing that there was this tremendous impact when people would come together. And he actually said, when 2 minds come together, it's almost as if a third mind is being created that can really achieve tremendous things, because the sum of the 2 parts is greater than, I always say that wrong, but 3 coming together is much greater than 1 plus 1, or 2 coming together is much greater than 1 plus 1,
mm-hmm.
which is 2, but it's almost like a 2 plus
mm-hmm.
in terms of what was going on. And then the other thing that I thought about as I was prepping for our podcast was that I really talked about this back last August when you and I were talking about my post. I thought the association would do him good. And what I remembered was that starting in the early 1930s, there was a group of authors in Oxford, England that got together, and they were known as the Inklings. And they would share each other's draft manuscripts and really critique each other really, really hard. And the interesting thing was that from those meetings, we got writings like C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters, The Chronicles of Narnia,
mm-hmm.
J.R. Tolkien with The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. So these are tremendous literary works that were really developed under the concept and critiqued under the concept of a mastermind.
Yeah.
Which is this group learning.
Very powerful.
It's just critical.
Mm-hmm.
It is. And then another thing that I noticed when I was looking at this post that I forgot, Dr. David McClellan, a Harvard psychologist, refers to the folks that we spend most of our time around as our reference group.
Mm-hmm.
And he said they determine as much as 95% of our success or failure.
Yeah, I remember we talked about that back in August.
So it's like,
uh-huh.
Yeah, so who are you hanging with? And what
mm-hmm.
are you doing with these folks? Are you learning? Are you putting yourself in a group that's going to help you learn?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I know
Marisa,
we were talking before this, that this was both something that you and I struggled with in school.
Right. In high school.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't like it,
But didn't you find that once you got into, work setting,
yes,
it was easier And
Right.
I know, at least for me, I was more interested. Like, I love working with other people now. But I wish now, after, going through all the notes that you shared with me on this topic, I'm wishing that I had done more of it before.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember even in some college courses that I took where we had to do some group study,
Mm-hmm.
and even, talking to my kids, some of them hated group study in college because, and I think you mentioned this, sometimes you end up being the person that carries the group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never good. But something else that I noticed, especially with my youngest son, in a very rigorous program, where literally they just study all the time, and there's the class that he's in, the cohort only is made up of 70 students. That's it.
Wow.
And they spend 2 years studying together, and I've seen that they will be literally working as almost like a mastermind in a Google Hangout type of environment, where they're coming up with study notes, they're sharing them, they're sharing thoughts, they're sharing ideas, and we just yesterday I heard again that the students that graduate from Lemoyne's PA program are the sought after students.
Mm-hmm.
PA graduates, because of the rigor is the right word, the rigor of the program, and how ready they are for the world, because of, I believe, the fact it's a small cohort, and they work together all the time.
Well, isn't it amazing too that they can? You mentioned Google Hangouts. There's
Right.
plenty of other apps and collaboration tools out there as well that have really enhanced the way you can do this. Because even, I'm not much older than your youngest son, and I'm about the same age as your kids. It's when I was in college, and that was just when Google Docs was first starting, and that was kind of the dawn of the collaboration tool. But even still, then it was like you had to align your schedules and be at the same place at the same time and meet in the library. And we've really, with technology, made it a lot easier for people to work together, both in the school level, but also professionally, collaborating at work and on teams.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I won't tell you that I existed before computers, but I remember if you wanted to collaborate, you had to share a floppy drive with somebody.
I remember the 3.5 floppy A.
Yeah, well, I remember the 5 1/4 that was literally floppy.
That's true.
Anyways.
So let's talk about some of the benefits of, learning with others, or collaborating on projects and things like that.
Yeah, so some of the information that I found, there was a 2014 study that determined that students learning in a collaborative situation had greater knowledge acquisition, retention of material, and a higher order of problem solving and reasoning abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you just think about that, knowledge acquisition, retention of the material, better problem solving, better reasoning, it was simply a result of the fact that they were working collaboratively in this learning environment. And what they said was that the interactions and discussions with others allowed the group to construct new knowledge and place it within the conceptual framework of existing knowledge, and then refine that information.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I were sharing just before we started the recording of, I was reading in again in John Maxwell's book, No Limits. And he talked about when he writes. So he's written over 100 books. I don't know how many of them are New York Times bestsellers. Literally, he has sold millions and millions and millions of copies of books. So I thought, well, he just must be a really great writer. Well, he is. However, he said in his book, when he was talking about growth capacity, he said, I collect a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts. Once I get those thoughts together, I write an outline for a book. He said, then I bring together these trusted advisors, call it an inner circle, whatever you want. He said, I send them the outline first. Then we come together. He said, sometimes it's 3 hours, sometimes it's 2 days. And they critique my outline and change it for me.
Mm-hmm.
He said, then I write. And he writes everything longhand with a 4-color pen, which is an interesting thing. But that's the way he writes, and the colors have different meanings for him. Then he gives his handwritten manuscript to one of his teammates, Charlie Wetzel, who's one of his writing partners, and Charlie will go back through and help massage it, make it, you know, a little bit more readable. And then it goes back to John, and only then does it go to the editors. But so there's this constant teamwork that probably is the reason why his books are so well received, because they're written in a very understandable way with some really deep thoughts, with a lot of supplemental content, quotes and reports and things like that. And that's what you get when you work together in a group.
Right.
Everything gets better. Your learning gets better. The other thing was that they said that since 80% of employees work in a group setting nowadays,
which I thought seemed low. I'd be surprised if it wasn't higher than that.
Yeah, they must be looking at thinking things like, you know, bank tellers and things, and store clerks don't collaborate. I don't know. But you're right. I think it's low. But then they said when students in college and in high school, in secondary and post-secondary education, spend time studying in groups, it really gives them the opportunity to engage in the process skills regarding, you know, critical processing of information, things like that, working with others, and collaboration before they have to enter the world of work.
And communication skills.
Absolutely. The communication's huge because, you know, we all know that the tendency these days is to communicate, you know, via text, you know, via tweet, 144 characters, whatever, when we know that just sets us up for a lot of issues down the road.
And I think that group work also encourages, you know, healthy dialogue and healthy disagreement on things, because you bring together different perspectives, and it gives people an opportunity to kind of figure out how to have those conversations.
Right.
Instead of just getting into the workforce and, you know, 80% plus are going to be working in group settings,
right,
experiencing that for the first time.
Exactly. Then there were some other things. There were other things that I found when I was doing some research on this, is the benefit of learning in groups. It cuts down on procrastination, which I thought was great, because I can't say I am a procrastinator. You know, like if it's like I remember somebody saying, you can't ever say you were an alcoholic. You just aren't drinking. You know, and I really believe that procrastination can be just as insidious. We can find ways to excuse it, but I'm a procrastinator, and I'm going to battle that my whole life. So this was a great thing for me to realize, that if I could set up these learning opportunities to learn things that I want to work on, and I do it with a group, I can't procrastinate because I have to do it.
Right.
You know, with our masterminds that we work through at MACNY, I know that the first Friday of every month we're doing a 21 Laws Mastermind, and I better be ready for it. Yep.
And I know that my group meets the last Friday of every month, and I have to have my book read and ready to go too.
And I better start looking at the books that I'm going to be facilitating when you're out on maternity leave, because I better read them.
Yes.
Because it's coming soon. So again, it's that meeting of regular times. You just simply can't procrastinate. So I think it's a great tool for that. It helps you learn faster, which sounds almost counterintuitive if you think about it. Because, you know, I would think, well, no, just leave me alone with my stuff and I'll just study. No, you're going to gain understanding and knowledge quicker, because it's a more vibrant, it's a more engaged. You got to do your homework ahead of time, but you actually get together and talk about things that may be confusing for you. So if you think about, I'm reading a book, so, you know, the No Limits book that I'm reading now, for like the second time. If I would be able to sit down with other people that are talking about how they've applied some of these concepts in their life, the book all of a sudden has much greater meaning than me reading it 2, 3, 4 times. Because we said that the reason why people have different understandings is because it speaks to their life at that time. So unless I'm going to live through all of those events, I'll never gain that understanding. But by sitting down with people that are living through them, I gain their learning as well as mine. Especially
when you have a mix of people, right? So I know your mastermind group, there's men, there's women, there's baby boomers, there's millennials,
Right.
there's people that are working in industrial setting, and there's people who are in a service provider setting.
Yes.
So you're really bringing together a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives, and I think it really helps the group.
Right, which you mentioned the third item here, the new perspectives. I wouldn't know those things. I ran a factory. I was working in that manufacturing environment for 35 years. I never worked in the service sector. I don't know what kinds of things, finance people have to deal with or investment brokers have to deal with. And they were certainly interacting much more with the public than I was. I had this set group of people that I met with every day, of the year type of thing. And once in a while I would travel, I would see customers. But what is it like to have to deal with that many people, and how might these laws be lived out? So again, it gives us that perspective. The thing about the perspective, though, in the mastermind is that we have to be willing to be open to the ideas. And I think for me, that's often a challenge. It's getting easier as I get older. I know when we were doing our lunch and learn last week at Mackney on Friday, we were watching a talk that John Maxwell gave, and I love when he says this. He goes, "When I was younger, there were a lot of absolutes in my life. As I get older, there are a lot fewer, but the ones that I hold dear because they've been proven true." And I thought, yeah, that's true. When I was younger, I used to tell people, before I was married, I was an expert on raising teenagers and having a successful marriage. And then all of a sudden you get married and you realize, this is wonderful, but it takes work. It's not as easy as I thought. And then you get kids and it's like, oh my goodness, they didn't come with a user manual. Is there a reset button so I can start over? No, you can't reboot. You can't do a Control-Alt-Delete on your kid. And start over with a fresh thought process. So as you get older, perhaps it'll be easier for people to think about things and have a more open mind. I guess that might be a way to put it. Learning new study skills, because we learn them from other people as we watch how they do things. That's one of the great things, too, that I love about the collaboration that we have at work, where there's a lot of things I have no idea how to do. And by working with others, I learn so many new things. Every day I learn new things. And it was interesting. Yesterday I was doing a 360 for an administrator in a school. And it was just so neat to be in that learning environment and observe what's happening, how things are happening. And if we think about it, more and more of our, even this is a kindergarten through second grade, but actually it's a pre-K through second grade building. So much more collaborative learning, even at that level, which I think is awesome.
That's great.
How about breaking the monotony?
That's important.
Oh, it is. I remember one of my kids, our middle son, talking about going into his bedroom to study and literally studying for like an hour, reading a textbook and getting done and saying, I don't even know what I studied. Because it was so monotonous and his mind started to wander. And even though he really was, it wasn't that he was goofing off, he was studying. But it was such a monotonous thing for him that he couldn't put it together. Whereas if, and I don't care what you're studying. You could be studying history, you could be studying, creative writing. Hearing other people talk makes it a lot more enjoyable. Filling in the gaps. Gaps in your own notes. One of the things that Tim, my son, was telling me that one of his classmates in the PA program, somebody stole her laptop out of her car.
Oh no.
And all of her notes were on her laptop. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, because I know how many notes they take. And I said, so he goes, well, all of us are going to share our notes with her. And so even that, so you think about it, for her, it was a tragedy. And I'm hoping she gets it back. Because, there's a lot of ways to track those things these days. But even if she gets it back, being able to compare the notes that others have written down, how much more that will enrich her learning experience. And the last one we've already touched on was the practice for the real world. So we're talking here about students in college or in secondary or post-secondary education working in this collaborative environment gives them practice for the real world. So for me, when I think, if we think back, Marissa, of the things that we've talked about, which ones do you think are the ones that for you make it the most valuable way to learn?
I would say for me, new perspectives and I'll pick three. I'd say procrastination solution.
Yep.
Learn faster and get new perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, I for sure. That's awesome. That's a great list. For me, the procrastination one is big because I need that accountability environment. The new perspectives, that the power of the mastermind is just so powerful. It's a vibrant learning experience. And then I think for me, because I get bored easily, the breaking of the monotony, where even if I like a book that I'm reading, there are a couple books that I've read where, I'm thinking back, somebody one time, there's an author that's written novels. Did they call them historical novels or something like that, about biblical times. And there was one book that I read that literally it was like 1 a.m. and I'm still reading. I couldn't put it down. But typically I have to work to stay engaged in a book that I'm reading, a hard copy of. And being able to break it into smaller bites and then hear what others are thinking, that just to me is huge. Which is really, if we think about it, that's we're at MACNY, we're trying to get to more and more of that type of an environment, where the transformational leadership class that I have is really a mastermind that meets twice a month, once in person and once on the phone. And we've got the 21 Laws, we've got the book study mastermind that you lead, and we're trying also to get back to some executive roundtables, which give more and more of our members the opportunity to really engage in this, because it is the best way, hands down, to learn. So we've moved on to learning in groups.
Yes. Any hints for next week?
Yes. Discipline.
Oh, that's important too.
It is. And I'm not talking about disciplining others.
Yeah,
I'm talking about self-discipline. So I've been doing a lot of research on that already. I'm going to have some time this weekend to do more, so that when you get my post sometime Monday, it's probably going to be later in the day Monday because I won't be getting back home till probably midday Monday. But I picked this one because I need it, and I'm engaging in, I'm trying to commit myself to some, and maybe, we can talk about it a little bit next week. So what am I doing to accomplish some of the things that I'm trying to do? Because I need help with it. And really, I want to encourage our listeners, who are you going to bring together to be part of your mastermind? What is it? Pick some things that you need to work on, that you want to learn, and then identify who is it that you're going to learn that with. And I would love it if they would, send in to us, what are you going to try to learn? They don't have to tell us who, but, how many people do you think you could get together? Because that's where the impact of the mastermind is going to come. And the reason why I'm asking them to decide what they're going to do is that's the first step in discipline.
Awesome. You
have to take the thought and put it into action. So,
looking forward to that.
Any exciting plans for the weekend?
I will be watching the royal wedding tomorrow morning.
Oh, tomorrow morning. So how early does that?
I think the coverage starts on NBC at 4 in the morning.
Oh.
And then I think it'll all be over by 9. Got our last swim lesson of the season.
Oh.
And then I was hoping it would be a nice weekend, but it looks like we'll have some rain.
Yeah, I think so.
So
well, I'm leaving town.
I know you're heading.
I'm leaving town. My flight leaves at 1:30 today.
Great.
And I will be heading to Arizona for a wedding, where my wife told me it will be brilliant sunshine and in the mid-90s.
Ooh, brilliant sunshine. How nice.
So we're going to leave sunshine here. We're gonna find sunshine there. So get all the rain done before Monday morning when we fly back.
I think it's supposed to be nice again on Monday. So
it is. That's the plan. I don't want to see the rain right now.
Good. You won't.
I hope not. Now I'm not
in Arizona.
Right. I'm not a fan of mid-90s, but like they say, it's dry heat.
Yeah, it's dry heat.
It's dry heat.
Whatever that means.
Exactly. It just means it's like an oven.
Right.
So, all right. Well, I hope you have a great weekend. And with that, I'm Dave Freund.
I'm Marisa Norcross.
And this was The Next Page.